Hello, my name is Jaru, and today I'm talking about Deltarune. There will be major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale, so please play them both before watching this. Hey, remember that video I did about discovering stuff in the code? Yeah, this is like that, but shorter, because I wanted to get this video out before the end of the month. Just like last time, these discoveries aren't necessarily new to the community, but they are new to me. So today, I'll be sharing my own analysis and interpretation of these hidden details. Before we dive in, consider supporting me on Patreon. Even $1 a month can go a long way towards keeping this channel up and running. Thank you for your time, and now, let us begin. My first discovery is somewhat minor, but still interesting thanks to its connection to the Mystery Man. Who is the Mystery Man? Well, Mystery Man is the name I've started using in reference to the intro entity who helps us build a vessel. In other words, he's the guy everyone thinks is Gaster. And one of the many things that seems to be connected to this man are certain files in the game which are all capitalized. One of these all caps files is this sprite, simply called Image Friend. The eye colors may cause you to think this is Spamton, but there are a lot of reasons why this isn't likely to be the case. For one, none of Spamton's sprites are listed using all capital letters the way this one is. Secondly, the whole point of Spamton hiring us is because he can't get into Queen's Mansion. This sprite only appears in her basement, so it being Spamton doesn't seem to make much sense. Thirdly, the face design is all wrong. Spamton's smile doesn't look like this. The friend's smile has its mouth and teeth stretched upwards in an arc. Spamton's smile is mainly only implied thanks to these marks on his cheeks. Furthermore, Spamton's teeth are not individually drawn, instead being depicted as big white blocks. The friend's teeth, by contrast, are individually drawn. And fourthly, Spamton can't teleport or levitate, which makes his appearance above this void pretty bizarre. In short, I don't think it's Spamton. All that said, this friend sprite has been common knowledge in the community for some time now, which is why this sprite is not one of my discoveries. I was just refreshing you on this face so you'd understand my real discovery. You see, in the files are a number of unused sprites, including this barricade. Given what this sprite is called, it seems likely that these were meant to appear during the roller coaster segment, but were ultimately cut. This one has a Q on it, likely standing for Queen. However, there is one other such barricade sprite to be found. This is Coaster Barricade Alt. Look familiar? Even if you believe the other face might be Spamton, this sprite most certainly cannot be. Of course, this sprite is never used and thus isn't hard canon, but the fact that Toby was ever willing to use the sprite at all is still informative. It suggests Toby did not consider this face appearing on a flat two-dimensional barricade to be a problem. That in turn implies that this friend is similar to the Cheshire Cat, able to appear and disappear at will. As for how I interpret this sprite, and the identity of the friend in general, I feel confident saying it's not Spamton. Instead, I think it is a servant of the Mystery Man. I think this creature, with its ability to teleport, levitate, and appear on flat surfaces, is being used as a spy to observe the Delta Warriors. Why this is being done, and to what end, is a matter for another day, but it is quite interesting. My second discovery is also interesting, as it could have massive ramifications for the future of Deltarune. Some time ago, data miners found these images in the code. These are chapter numbers, with images already existing for chapters 0 through 10. This was fascinating in its own right, as it not only suggested there may be more than 7 chapters, but also that there may be a prologue in the form of a chapter 0. However, other folks, especially folks with better understanding understanding of coding than me have provided counterarguments in which they theorize that these were just placeholder images or were accidentally generated by some code. In other words, these sprites are not enough evidence on their own to suggest there will be any more chapters beyond the original 7. My only counterargument is to point out the fact that these chapter number files are in all capital letters. This is a sign they're connected to the Mystery Man and are thus meant to be analyzed by the community. Would Toby really leave in these chapter numbers if he specifically labeled them to be looked at? I'm not so sure. This seems like curated content rather than just random code. However, there is more evidence to be discussed, which is where my discovery comes in. You see, on the chapter select menu, we are shown this screen. There's the chapter numbers on the left, the chapter titles in the middle, and the chapter icons on the right. These chapter icons are what I dug into, and I discovered there are 10 individual chapter icons in the files. Most of them are identical blank slots. But as you'll recall, we can only see 7 chapters on this page, so why add more than 7 chapter icons if there's only ever meant to be 7 chapters? Of course, this could just be another instance of placeholders and algorithms, but the fact that this happened twice, with extra chapter numbers and extra chapter icons, is certainly noteworthy. Ultimately, the main thing to keep in mind is that Toby has never stated outright how many chapters this game will have. He likely doesn't even know himself at this point. That alone is why you shouldn't take these 7 chapters to be hard evidence of anything. Toby is great about planning out his story, but planning out game development is another matter entirely. Still, the idea of extra chapters is certainly an enticing one. I'll happily take 20 chapters if he's up to it. That brings us to my third and final discovery for this video. This one is very interesting. Others in the community have already taken note of it, but there are many implications from this detail that I haven't seen acknowledged. So, what is this discovery? Well, in chapter 2, there's this room. It's Noelle's room in Queen's Mansion. It's a pretty neat space with a lot of interesting lore hints about Noelle and her family. However, there is an alternate version of this room that appears in the files. Here it is. It's pretty much identical to the room we get in the full game, with only 2 small differences. The first is the Ferris wheel, which has a door on the side of the carriage. This is different from the final version of the sprite. However, the far more interesting detail is over here. On these tables are what can only be described as pills and pill bottles. Remember, items in this room are based off Noelle's search history. If there are pills here, then that means these are pills she's been looking up, which suggests she, or someone she knows, is interested in or is currently taking medication. However, before we can even begin to speculate on the contents of these pills, we first have to address the ramifications of these drugs existing at all. Firstly, this suggests that Noelle and the other monsters all have organic bodies, as it wouldn't really make much sense otherwise. The physiology of monsters in Undertale wasn't the most well explained, but we did know that their bodies were almost entirely made of magic. It wouldn't really make much sense for a normal drug to affect an entity made of magic. As such, if monsters are being prescribed drugs in Deltarune, that suggests monsters in this universe have physical organic bodies, not magical bodies. But wait, it goes deeper. Even if monsters have physical bodies, that doesn't mean their biology is the same as human beings. Drugs don't affect different species the same way they affect humans. Specialized medicine has to be developed, which is expensive. If the pharmaceutical industry in Deltarune has bothered to develop drugs specifically for monsters, then that suggests there is a sufficiently large market for the endeavor to be profitable. As such, we can conclude that monsters are far more numerous in this reality than they were in Undertale. That's the only way to justify the pharmaceutical industry investing in them. This suggests that monsters are at least a decently large minority, that they equal humanity in numbers, or it could suggest monsters are the dominant species in this reality. All of this information can be deduced purely from the existence of these pill bottles. And that's not even discussing the potential contents of these pills and what that says about Noelle and or her family. Let's start with the most obvious interpretation. Noelle was looking up drugs because her father is in the hospital. She was just looking up treatments and stuff like that. That is a completely valid reading of this scenario, although it's not the most interesting. It might be proof that Rudy is taking a turn for the worse if Noelle is looking up experimental drugs and treatments, but that's open to interpretation. There's also the possibility that she's looking up medications that her mother takes, although we know so little about her that it's impossible to guess what kind of drugs she might need. Then there's the most interesting possibility, that these drugs belong to Noelle. There are a variety of reasons for Noelle to want or need medication. The first is that she is repeatedly characterized as being a very scared, nervous, and anxious individual. This could have led to her having blood pressure issues that require medication to fix. Alternatively, given that her mother is an ice queen, her dad is sick, and her sister is missing, it could simply be that these are antidepressants. Again, that's something very in character for Noelle. And lastly, since Noelle is in a Toby Fox game, you could read these pills as being drugs like spironolactone or estradiol or things like that. Ultimately, there are countless ways one can interpret a teenage girl having access to medication. And with that, we've covered all of the discoveries I have to share with you today. I mostly made this video to give y'all some food before the end of the month, and to shore up my bank account after my Gravity Falls video flopped. Even so, I did unironically find these discoveries quite fascinating, and I hope you enjoyed my analysis of them. I've got several projects coming down the pipeline, so I'm hoping to give you guys all sorts of Deltarune content in the coming months. Thank you very much for watching. A massive thanks goes out to my patrons for their very generous support. A special shout out goes to E-Roll, Hannah Brown, Suit Number 1, and a Switch Dog. And a very special shout out goes to Sipur CKX7 and Osile Ponce for being the only ones to support me on the Ralsei tier. My deepest thanks go out to all of you for supporting me in this way. You are far, far too kind, and it really does me and my family a lot of good. Thank you very much for your support. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you've got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.